How much do you surf the internet? Do you remember when you first started using it? Well, it was 1991. When we first got access to the web, we were amazed at the first website. Well, fast forward 30 years. Yes, 30 plus years. And so much has changed. Well, today we ask, what is the internet today? And is it on a downward spiral? I'm Stefanie Dekker, and welcome to The Stream.
It all started with a connection. And suddenly, a new world opened before us.
By 2026, 99% of the internet will be generated by artificial intelligence.
Welcome.
AI is going to get information from what other AI models wrote, so it's going to get so diluted that we won't even know what's real or what's fake anymore.
From blogs to tweets, from desktops to our palms, from single voices to entire communities.
I think we need to destroy the data centers and start over again from a pre-internet era.
100% agree.
Hey!
Well, today we have no way of knowing how much of what exists online has been made by humans or artificial intelligence. And that's not counting the generated images and videos that are flooding our timelines and our search results. People are questioning whether the internet will reach a point where it's completely saturated by AI content and if this will lead to its collapse. Well, to discuss all of this, we are joined by Aidan Walker, a digital historian and content creator in Washington, D.C., and we have Peter Zezas, a news and policy commentator who focuses on U.S. politics, technology, and science, and he joins us from Newark in New Jersey. Peter, if I can start with you, where are we at the point of the internet? And then we can sort of backtrack a little bit. How would you describe it today? Is it in decline, or as many people are calling it, a decay?
Yeah, I would very much say we are in a social media internet decay, especially with AI. I think it started before AI, but I think AI has accelerated that greatly.
Aidan, do you agree with that?
I'd agree that the internet as we know it right now is ending. The internet is always changing. The one constant that we've probably seen over the 30-so-ish years of it existing has been sort of constant radical change. And so I'd say with AI especially, we're kind of in a new era where a lot of the fundamental premises that people operated by now have shifted, and everyone's trying to figure out what to do, everyone from the user on up to like the tech CEO.
Well, we're going to look into that a little later. What can we do, if anything, about it? Now, concerns around the internet's fate have been growing for years, even going so far to say that it's nearing its end.
The dead internet theory is a speculative theory that claims that most of what we see on the internet, social media posts, articles, comments, isn't coming from real humans, but is actually coming from bots and AI systems. Originally, when the theory was invented in like 2021, it was referring to bots in systems of engagement on the internet. So think like likes, comments, reposts, kind of like a ghost audience faking virality. But now, with AI, the scope of the dead internet theory has now expanded to include not just the engagement being fake, but the actual content itself. Last week, we saw the release of Sora 2, the most realistic, lifelike AI video generator yet, with deepfakes literally built in as a feature. God, wild choice. And so, of course, everyone's wondering how long until my entire feed and the entire internet is just filled with this stuff.
Peter, I saw you nodding there. It was a conspiracy theory at the start, wasn't it? The dead internet. Has it turned into something more realistic?
Yes, 100%. I remember for years people talking about bot farms where people set up phones and it's not real people. It's someone on a computer interacting with hundreds of people at the same time. And that may have been true at one point, but now with AI, you can do it by yourself. You don't even need a bot farm or anything like that. It is... and like that video said, especially with now AI content, it's no longer just interacting with people, it's creating its own form of content and developing a person out of these accounts.
Aidan, how far have we come from the original purpose of the internet? Was it always going to change its shape and its form, or has it really turned into something that at the time perhaps wasn't foreseen?
Well, nothing is inevitable. You know, when Tim Berners-Lee or whoever was making it at CERN, there's no way he could have known that 30 years from now, we'd be sitting here looking at our phones and saying, is anything real? Do I know if any picture is actually of the thing it claims to be of? But if you look at that process over those decades, it's a lot of people at different points who made decisions or decided not to make decisions often in the case of kind of the way governments have regulated it. And so you have users, audiences who are, boosting certain types of content, who are creating certain kinds of communities. You have companies that are making plays for business domination or often also making political kinds of decisions about the ways they want these social spaces to look, or kind of stumbling, backwards into having to make these decisions about the way the public square functions. And so I think a lot of that history could have turned out differently, and it still can. I don't think we're locked into the current internet as it exists today. And with like dead internet theory, you have this sense that we're surrounded by bots and nothing is real, everything is fake. And that could be true, but it doesn't always have to be true. The bots are allowed to be there because we haven't invested in doing things that would create a safer, more hygienic internet. And the thing that I really fear is that the overlords, which may be the wrong word to use, but the people who, control like Peter and I's fortunes on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, ultimately don't really care whether it's our faces or a robot doing it. And so that's kind of the conversation I think we need to have. Like, what kind of internet do we want? And is it the most profitable internet for the companies, or is it the internet that's best for us?
It is all about generating profit these days, isn't it? Peter, when we talk about the golden age of the internet, for you personally, like, is there an era that you remember? Is there a time when you were in awe of what it could do? Are you nostalgic for that time?
I think, I think I don't believe I have a golden age per se, but I think the for me at least, but the best time I think would have been just before major companies figured out how to monetize every aspect of the internet, because I think that monetization really shattered what was arguably one of the last third spaces for a lot of young people who were driven to the internet because physical third spaces were being removed from society.
Okay, well, you're talking there about big companies and, the finances of it all. And it seems that the world's largest search engine, Google, is also getting on users' nerves. Even before its AI preview now took up a third of our screens. You probably noticed that when you Google something and you have that AI response. Take a listen.
Before it showed up, search engines were cram-jammed full of paid results and spam. But then Google figured out a better way. It didn't use either of those things, it used something called PageRank. It was really good, and so they got the reward. And their reward was more money than anybody had ever heard of. It was so good, they caused themselves a problem. They became a monopoly, and monopolies can't grow by getting new people in. All the people are already in. The only way to keep growing was to squeeze more money out of the existing people. So Google replaced the math nerds that built the company with a bunch of guys from McKinsey, the world's largest exporter of business villains. Those villains increased the number and size of ads and made it harder to tell that they were ads. Then they figured out that if the results were worse, people would have to search twice, thus seeing twice as many ads. They rolled back helpful features and let spammers back in. And voila, now they are cram-jammed full of paid results and spam. They have become the monster they were fighting all along. Except this time, the monster is a monopoly, so you can't leave. What are you gonna do? Bing it?
I see both of you nodding to that. I'm sure Google and McKinsey would, however, disagree with his opinion. Aidan, what has marked the change for you? We don't want to get any legal troubles here on the stream, but you both seem to agree with what he is saying.
Yeah, I mean, my experience about this is I worked for a website that Know Your Meme that relied on a lot of kind of like SEO ranking. And so when that decision came out, we sort of felt, our business is really, really threatened. And I don't work there anymore. So what I sort of mean by the companies being greedy and wanting a lot of profit is they have become monopolies at this point. I agree with, what that creator, Alex Falcone, I believe, said about that. But the real bothersome thing is that the internet ran as we knew it on a set of deals. Maybe the most famous one is kind of between the press and like Facebook and Twitter. BuzzFeed was the thing that people shared on Facebook. And then Facebook had a thing that people would go to Facebook to see, and BuzzFeed had a vehicle to get its content out there. And then that deal really broke down. And I think Google had the same sort of deal with SEO sites and vendors, and that deal broke down because one of the parties to the deal, the platform, has much more leverage and really realized that the user experience wasn't that important in the end to it making its money. And so rather than having this sort of two-way business deal that structured a lot of the social internet, it chose, kind of just to take it all and put it in the AI overview where it doesn't have to pay anyone, it doesn't have to listen to anybody. And my big worry is that the platforms are doing the same thing with creators now, where there used to be kind of a two-way deal between a content creator and the platform and the algorithm that served their content. And now with maybe an AI avatar or something, the platforms realize, hey, we don't need to deal with all these actual regular people out there. So I think it's fine to make profit, probably. The internet is a business. McKinsey, there's people who work hard at McKinsey, I guess, but like we should really be thinking about the social good as well here, because this isn't just a business. This is a third place, as Peter was saying.
And I think a lot of us forget, right, that the internet is a business. It's interesting, you were talking about a content creator. We actually have one coming up after your segment who actually left her job as a content creator on social media because she was so disappointed by it and went back to a regular corporate 9-to-5 job. Peter, Aidan, I think you alluded to it there, that you thought that we still might have the power to affect some change in this. If I understood you correctly, Peter, do you see this as a runaway train, or do we have some influence in where it's going?
I think, like was stated before, I do think we always have a choice. I think there are times where it grows increasingly difficult to turn back on choices we've already made, but I don't ever think it's set in stone. So I think there are avenues and ways to mitigate or get out of this sort of decay that we have entered or started, but it may not be as easy as it was 5 years ago.
Okay, well, I want to throw something in here now. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library that aims to preserve content, websites, and software to music, books, microfilms, and beyond. Now, one of its most popular features is the Wayback Machine. Now, it allows you to time travel to websites that no longer exist today, or allow you to track the evolution of content you know and love. Now, here we tested it with the Al Jazeera English site, jumping through looking through its history. It took a lot of us down memory lane. Now, Aidan, what is the significance of this kind of work? You're laughing there, with this kind of archiving. I mean, we can go back and see how things have changed and evolved. How important is that?
I laugh because I'm such a big fan of the Internet Archive, and I'm so happy to talk about it. I think if there's one institution that I am like radically in favor of, it's the Internet Archive, because it's so important to have this history, to bring us all down memory lane, to remember who we were, to remember the culture that really moved us. But I think also the history of the present is largely being talked about and done and deliberated online. And working at the meme site, Know Your Meme, where I was kind of tracing a lot of these pieces of online culture as they developed in years past, it's really, really hard to get a clear record of that, which to me means that we might not have a clear record of like the kinds of conversations people were having in 2020, which were really important for a variety of reasons. And if we don't have that clean record, 30, 40 years on, then the people who, if that record is in private hands, if, there's people who want to peddle misinformation and twist it a certain way, then it's a lot easier because the receipts just don't exist to sort of say, this is what people were saying online, this is how people felt about it.
It's also actually gone forward, the Internet Archive, because on its 25th anniversary, it launched the Way Forward machine. Now, that campaign's goal was to raise awareness about the threats to a free and open internet, everything we're talking about today, by showing a dystopian future in the year 2046. Now, you can see it there. We played around with it. Now, these are requests for your most sensitive information, like your thumbprint, your credit cards, and scanning your retinas. Now, for sure, It may feel kind of fun to play around with it, but there is also a very unsettling message here. A taste, perhaps, of what is at stake, but maybe are we already there? Peter, how do you see it?
I think we're definitely headed in that direction. I've covered in the past year multiple times regarding digital IDs being implemented and specific biometric data being used to sort of paywall off access to the internet in other countries. And I can very much see it coming to America in the near future. And it is very much in line with this sort of way forward machine where it using your biometric data to wall off content or wall off access to portions of the internet purely for surveillance and or censorship purposes can be really dangerous.
So, Aidan, off the back of that, like I think you alluded to it as well, the concept of, let's say, digital IDs. I know it's a little bit off topic, but it's kind of linked, isn't it? Is this where we're going? Access to websites, having to give all your personal data, your retina scan, even laptops nowadays, you know, there's facial recognition. We put our finger on. How would you describe that?
Well, I think it's such low-hanging fruit for a lot of governments and for a lot of big companies that it sort of is inevitable that something like it ends up getting done. And I think this circles back to the point that we can't just make decisions about these sites of cultural exchange, of economic transaction based off what the people in charge of them want. You know, I think we do need some kind of democratic element going on because inevitably there is going to have to be some kind of, you know, ID check, password protection, whatever, for the sake of security and making these places run. But it has to be a balance with, you know, the individual rights of users and of other businesses that are interacting here. And so I do think that because of that threat, we need to have a broader policy conversation about how to protect people and how to, you know, maybe give people a right to their privacy and how to prevent that like 1984-esque situation from happening, because I think we have the technology to build that in the world today, and a lot of people would have an interest in having that be the way that we access the internet.
Absolutely. It really does look like we're going back to George Orwell, 1984, everything he predicted in that book, and how important is it for us to have a say in where we're going, right? Aidan and Peter, thank you very much for joining us on the stream.
Thanks for having us.
Now, we've been talking about the potential end of the internet, but it seems social media may be in an even worse situation. You may admit that your screen time keeps increasing, that we reach for our phones whenever we're free. Brain rot is real. And while the apps are still there, the original concept of social media could be dying. Ask yourself, is social media still social? Or is it just a never-ending doom scroll of random content and ads?
Over the past 5 years, social media has gone through one of the most dramatic transformations since it began. The platforms that once promised connection, community, and a voice for everyone have devolved into something much more harmful. Viral stunts, immature pranks, choreographed dances, also heightened levels of anxiety, depression, and the disruption of the very fabric of society.
Now, it seems more and more of us are quietly abandoning social media platforms, and that also appears to be the case for content creators, as the influencer job is being questioned and reconstructed. For a first-hand account, I'm joined by Evelyn Ramli. She's a former influencer who went back to a regular 9-to-5 corporate job. Now, she's joining us from Jakarta in Indonesia. Evelyn, there is a lot of money, isn't there, in content creation when you do hit that sweet spot. Why is it that you decided to leave what is a very sort of, you know, popular job these days and go back to the corporate 9-to-5?
You're definitely right. There is a sweet spot and the money is a bit insane to think about. Like when I was a content creator, most months I earned 4 times my current corporate salary. And money is not an issue, and that's not the reason why I left. But what did bother me was the moral and emotional cost. I was mainly in beauty and skincare, and so much of the industry relies on telling people, especially young women, that they're not enough. You know, like the language can sound so empowering and the core message might seem really good and beneficial for the audience, but it's still about insecurity and preying on these young women's insecurity. So I knew that's not something I wanted to be a part of. And a major turning point for me was also that the ongoing violence in Palestine, it really made me re-examine the global supply chains around the brands that I was promoting, like where the money goes, what these companies support, and what it really means to encourage my audience to buy their products. So that awareness kind of shifted how I saw myself as a creator, and I realized that I didn't want to be part of that.
Evelyn, do you think, sorry, let me just jump in there. Do you think, because it's so interesting, it is having such an impact on the younger generation, girls and boys, and especially you're mentioning, you know, girls, the beauty standards, what it is to be perfect, what it is to be accepted. And you do see this, and there's, you know, there's research into this, the effect, the real negative effect it is having. Do you think these girls understand that what they're seeing on their phones isn't real or is a brand, you know, is an advertisement?
I think it would be really, really very hard to. And it's so well embedded nowadays, like in day in the life videos, story times, get ready with me's. And of course, the most effective ads are the ones that feel so unnatural. I mean, so natural and so unscripted. And even as someone who has created that type of content, who knows like the planning and like the manipulation, so to speak, behind the scenes, it's difficult for me to realize until like very into the video or like near the end. So if it's difficult for adults and someone who has been in that position of creating that kind of content, I can't imagine how confusing it must be for teenagers.
Okay, so just if you can, in a synopsis, break it down, because I don't really understand. So I'm watching a day in the life, you know, you're getting ready in the morning, you're putting cream on. How much of that, you were talking about manipulation there, how much of that is companies telling you, use this product, you know, how does it work? How do you get paid? Like, give us a behind the scenes sneak peek at what it really is we're seeing.
I think especially for beauty and skincare companies, they're really leaning towards the natural, like soft selling instead of hard selling videos and content. So what that means is that they want us to integrate their products into things we would normally do. But of course, what we normally do has been polished, has been approved, has been crafted so it sells the image of the ideal consumer, right? Like if this wellness brand wants to portray a very healthy and balanced lifestyle, that would look like maybe someone who does yoga in the morning, goes to the gym or does like a cold shower and then uses their topical cream or a moisturizing lotion. So things that are part of our natural daily lives are elevated in some way, and the messaging is a bit sneaky in how it comes up. And that's how the more soft selling has evolved, from just like, use this product is good, it will give you these benefits.
So we don't even know that we're being basically sold something, right? We just think you look great, I want to use what she's using. Well, are you still posting anything other than news and politics, like your lunch or a random selfie like we used to? There's no fear of missing out on what our friends and others are up to these days, because many are not posting anymore.
I remember when I did my first social media detox back in 2018, I quit all the apps for 30 days. At the time, this was still considered pretty new, if not socially unacceptable. You really felt like you were going to miss out on what your friends were up to. It's different now. Now you're only missing out on some viral trends and a quick hit of dopamine.
Evelyn, is there still good online? I know this is a big question. How would you describe it? You used to work in this industry. Does it still have benefits, or is it really going in a direction that is concerning?
I think that there's definitely some good. I personally feel like there are creators that I genuinely enjoy watching and that I really believe their content is, you know, sharing pieces of themselves rather than sharing the superficial front. And there are also brands whose stories are so impactful and are aiming to make a difference. So definitely there are contents that are still worth watching past the superficiality. And I think for me, I personally still create content that is more normal, more casual, because the desire to create something and to make art out of nothing or create this something out of nothing is still there. And being able to express that and using social media as a form of expression is still really important to many people, I believe.
It's also about being aware, right? Like not being aware that what you're seeing is an ad. It looks natural, but it isn't. I think that is what's so difficult for so many of us, particularly the younger generation. Evelyn, unfortunately, that is all we have time for. So insightful. Thank you for joining us on the stream. From me and the entire fantastic stream team, we'll see you soon. Now make sure you log off, look at the sky and touch the grass. There's a whole world out there.